Supply Chain Talk, the live webinar with no presentations, no PowerPoint, just talk.
Good afternoon, and welcome to this week's episode of Supply Chain Talk. My name's Alistair Charlton, your host this afternoon. Our main topic today is better inventory management with digital twins, and before that, as usual, we will discuss a topical news item. And we invite your questions and comments in the side panel, and we'll try to get round to answering and addressing as many of those as we can. And for the comment and question that we find the most useful of the afternoon, we will be awarding a Supply Chain Talk mug. So do keep those questions coming. My four guests, which I will introduce now, are first of all, Nanda Kishore, who is Head of Global Supply Chain at Ineos Tysdell. And Nanda's an accomplished supply chain executive with over 28 years of global experience from automotive, heavy engineering, and the manufacturing sector. And he's based in Norway and away from work is an avid outdoor person who likes to run half marathons and also regularly goes mountaineering. And he recently summited Mira Peak in the Himalayas, which is in Nepal, and an altitude of close to 6,500 meters. So well done on that one. My second guest is Venkatesh Narayan, who is Head of Supply Chain at Tech Electronics. Venkatesh has worked on supply chain and continuous improvement in industries ranging from chemicals, paper, biotechnology, pharmaceuticals, consulting, banking, and consumer goods. He started his career as a marine engineer working on oil tankers, and he's lived and worked in Singapore and India, as well as in the US. Welcome, Venkatesh. My third guest is Pam Wiseman, who is Principal for Supply Chain Strategy at Supply Chain Advisory Services, LLC. Pam has over 30 years of leadership experience in global manufacturing and supply chain in industries including aerospace, electronics, and medical devices, and most recently leading the supply chain transformation of a $10 billion healthcare system. She's been recognized as number 4 in the Gartner top 25 healthcare supply chain teams, and Pam has traveled extensively in 29 countries for business and pleasure and plans to visit 5 more this year. Or next year, anyway, soon. And finally, Nana Achampong is a project manager for global supply chain at Textile Fashion Group. Nana is a data-driven project manager focused on developing supply chain capabilities, working alongside business and technical teams. And in his spare time, Nana enjoys checking out art exhibitions. So welcome all 4 of you. And let's now move to our news item, which is from just about a week or 2 ago. It was published on SupplyChainDigital.com, the website, and it's titled "Digital Twins Bring Resilience and Savings to Supply Chain." And I think it's useful actually just to quote a very sort of early sentence from the article, which is a nice sort of definition for our discussion of the main topic as well. And the article says that for the record, a digital twin is a dynamic, digitized model of a physical thing or a system that relies on sensor data to understand its state, respond to changes, improve operations, and add value. So it's a great definition, but it's, digital twins, I think, did actually start much more kind of twinning a physical thing, but more so, obviously, with supply chain, we're talking about more of a network, a model. And the article goes on to talk a little bit more about digital twins and how they're used in supply chain, and the fact that they can be even more complex because they may be multi-layered. It talks about the need for a strategy around common data platforms, so something for anyone considering setting up a digital twin of their supply chain network. And it mentions that there are some solutions of industry-specific standards and communities, and it mentions OPC Foundation, the Digital Twins Consortium, and Microsoft's Open Manufacturing Platform. And it then goes on to discuss some examples from aerospace and defense. And I wanted just to bring out one specific example, and that was to deal with the maximum takeoff weight for aircraft. And so aircraft have a maximum takeoff weight, and typically the weight limits that are imposed, as the aircraft is planned for its route, are much lower than that. But the article says that digital twins can be coupled with data from the weather and the flight profile to better estimate the required load without overloading the aircraft, and that can save fuel or maximize the I guess the cargo or passenger load of the aircraft. So had a very specific example, and I guess my sort of first sort of question around this is, that's the kind of, you could say, the best example the article's come up with. And is that really a digital twin, or is it just a better model than normal because it considers the weather, it considers other factors, it doesn't just consider aircraft weight and how long the route distance is and add a margin to that? So kind of, are digital twins really being a bit overhyped? Are they really that advanced? So a complicated question perhaps, but Nanda, over to you to start that discussion.
Wow, so you have to just stop me if I'm talking more, because it's a very passionate subject for me. So the thing is, in the definition, they talk about it's a dynamic. So it can be dynamic or it can be static. So that's for everybody to understand. It can be both. But on this specific example, I think what missing for people to understand is, because I come from an aerospace background, and way back in 93, 94, I'm talking about, when I was using Dassault systems and CATIA software, when we were designing the aircraft blades. Right, so the design comes from a wind tunnel, data taken out from a wind tunnel, and then they were static data, and then they were doing this CATIA model. So what the article is trying to say is, with the digital twins, you can have a live data. We have more data available on the weather and forecast and the wind for velocity and takeoff loads, and then these are all mechanical parts. So even a small micron millimeter of excess of radius or sharp will have an impact. So it can actually have the live data of the whole weight of the aircraft and can guide the whole system. So it's sort of a bit exaggerated, but this cannot be used when a aircraft is taking off. This is something which can be used before the aircraft can take off.
Yeah.
So it's not like a live there in that case, but it's very useful. And especially in other industries, this is very useful when you don't have access to certain places. You can have a static digital tool to check and have a virtual reality, go and check for access for maintenance, etc. So in a way, in my industry, this has brought in more safety culture, more safety requirements into the industry. I think I will stop here and allow others to talk.
Okay. No, thank you, Nanda. There's some great insights from you. Venkatesh, what's your thoughts on digital twins and their use?
So I think it depends on the use case, right? I mean, so it depends on what you're using it for. So in pharmaceuticals, you do have digital twins. And the reason is because you have to comply with the Drug Supply Chain Security Act of EU's FMD, Falsified Medicine Directive. There you serialize every usable product, and the data travels with the product. So as the product is manufactured and it goes down the supply chain up to the time it's dispensed, the data follows it. And the reason is because then the pharmacist can verify whether the product is genuine or not. And in the case of the US FDA regulations, it allows them to see where the drug has been. So that's the use case for the digital twin. In another case where we had gas cylinders that were distributed across hospitals, having a digital twin over there and being able to say, okay, how much pressure is left in the cylinder, that gives you when do I need to replenish my inventory. So there's that. You have real-time information on the key parameter for that cylinder, which is, has it been used or not? So yes, digital twins are useful, but it depends on what you're using it for.
Okay, no, thank you, Venkatesh. And just if I have one little follow-up question though, but that example you gave about the sort of level of gas in a cylinder in a hospital, well, wasn't that just a good old-fashioned telematics, which has been around for decades and decades? What's the difference suddenly calling it a digital twin? Where does telematics turn into a digital twin? It's a tough time.
Yeah, so the digital twin part is identifying by cylinder. Every cylinder, you know how much gas it has. And so it is an aspect of digital twin. Now, does it have to say, how does it look, or other parameters, what's the temperature? It really depends on what you want to use it for. In our case, it was basically to say, when do I need to go and replenish which cylinder, and which ones do I need to pick up versus not? And every cylinder is uniquely identifiable.
Yeah.
So from that standpoint, it is sort of, it is telematics, but on the other hand, it's also kind of a digital twin.
Yeah.
How you represent it within your system.
Thank you. No, it's great to get some of these examples. I'm sure it helps the audience kind of understand the spectrum of kind of simple telematics to full-scale digital twins with thousands of different data points pouring in. So it's useful. Thank you, Pam. I know that you've worked in aerospace, so welcome your thoughts on the article.
Well, thank you. I appreciate the question. My perspective goes back probably 25 years. So, and like you said, sort of remote monitoring has been around for a while. Remote monitoring of especially capital equipment to intervene when the performance is degrading and all that kind of good stuff. That's been around for a long time. So that was in the capital equipment electronic assembly industry. So fast forward, I did work at Pratt & Whitney and Sikorsky Aircraft. That was probably predating some of the new trends here. But at GE Transportation, we really did implement digital twins that fed back information about the diesel locomotives all the way back into the plant to actually change, address quality issues, wear issues, in addition to tuning the actual speed and other parameters of the locomotive itself to be better at fuel consumption and emissions. So we had a term called Brilliant Factory at GE, and that was the term that meant that data was feeding back into improvements in the plant and as well as some demand forecast, trend changing information. So I think that's particularly where it kind of helps supply chain, especially.
Yeah.
Some of that early intervention when there's a demand change or a quality issue that's emerging, that type of thing.
Okay, no, thank you. That's again some great examples. Really useful to hear that. And Nana, kind of, what are your thoughts on the article or on your experiences with digital twin?
Yeah, great question. I think Venkatesh had some really great call-outs in terms of it depends on the use case and where that's being applied to. So my perspective is a little bit nuanced, coming from the e-commerce apparel. Back and along with my panelists are more kind of heavy into the aerospace and defense realm. But I think when you think of a use case around temperature and being able to get a read on particular products that fall in line to that, that's where I think a digital twin could be. There's a value add in being able to report that information in real time going forward. So a little bit of my perspective, but I think some folks on the panel have called out some good use cases as well.
Okay, no, thank you, Nana. We've got actually a really interesting question here from Alan Jacques, which is asking, wouldn't a digital twin be used more heavily for simulation looking forward rather than monitoring? So I guess that's kind of building a little bit on saying, the journey has been from telematics, remote monitoring, through to a lot more sensor information, a lot more data coming in, which can allow us to react. But Alan is asking, well, couldn't you go further and actually take it forward to simulation? So maybe let's just sort of, before we get into our main topics, I think it's such a great question. Let's go around. Nanda, what do you think? I mean, in your experience, can digital twins now start to simulate forwards and really allow you to be even more proactive?
Absolutely. And there are a lot of industries which have taken this to this much higher than simulation also. So that's where when we talk about sensors and IoT devices, all of these are meant to capture data on a real-time basis. So we are using the data, and the main thing is, as mentioned in the article, the strategy is very important for this. What type of digital twin and for why, and what amount of data, because we have seen data can be a nightmare if we just have data which is not required. So because it's one thing to collect the data for simulation, other thing is to store the data. Because you start collecting on an hourly basis or a minute basis or a day basis on a vast majority of things. And then where is your storage? How are you going to store the data? So that's the challenge in terms of using this for simulation or more real-time activities. But it's possible. And I've seen like live examples, not to the fullest extent, but this is almost a reality, I would say. And most companies are using this for simulation and real-time access requirement than just to predict some things. So this is more like, earlier it was more of a valve type. Okay, if something goes down below this level, we trigger a reorder level. But this digital twin is where we are using to forecast at what time will the low stock go below a safety level. So that's the key in using the digital twin, and
Okay.
this is happening already.
Great, no, thank you.
Very good question. Very good question.
Venkatesh, you were focusing obviously on product verification in pharma and medical. How about the sort of taking that further to simulations?
You could, and when I say simulation, right? So let's say that you could do this at the edge, but let me explain what I mean. You have drug-device combinations, and the drug-device combinations are delivering therapy. So you could either give a standard therapy for every patient, or you could monitor the patient's outcomes and see how they are responding to the therapy, and fine-tune your device to deliver the appropriate levels of therapy. Now, what that means is you have to collect a lot of data and see what the do some AI kind of machine learning kind of algorithms to say, okay, how does it respond? Now you can do this at the edge, or you can do it at a central. The collection of data anyway needs to be central. Now, there's an aspect of simulation in that. So what if I change my pressure, or if I increase my temperature, or throughput rate? There are different parameters I could change. If insofar as you call that simulation, yeah, absolutely, you can use simulation. Outside of that, I'm not certain what simulation you would do to. That's limitation of my experience.
Yeah.
But the possibilities are endless, depending on what your use case again is. What are you using it for?
Yeah. Okay. Interesting. And I guess there's always that question, isn't there, of kind of simulation. It can only simulate on the rules that you've set up for it. So to some extent, is it true simulation, or is it just again an extended model? But that's kind of an even wider topic. Pam, you were talking about locomotives, and I guess the sort of the data you were taking from those was really allowing you to to proactively kind of refine and perhaps predict how they might be performing. So sounds like you were getting into that simulation world almost.
Yeah, actually, but the predictive analytics that enables is really powerful. Other than reacting to changing conditions and changing environmental conditions to tune the aircraft or the locomotive or feedback into the plant, to actually use those as predictive analytics to change how things would be done in the future is like the ultimate. Otherwise you're kind of reacting to past events. So I think that has great possibilities. We were starting to look at that as well, of course.
Mm-hmm. Okay, well, thank you. And Nana, finally from you, any thoughts on taking things forward to simulation?
Yeah, again, I think it will depend on kind of what folks had mentioned, and kind of just that acute use case. Are you able to track or want to see from a manufacturing standpoint how the product's kind of moving through, or if there's delays or with production of, let's say, an apparel item, what have you. So I think it's nuanced, but from the standpoint of does it fit your particular supply chain function in order to really get the value from the simulation? I think that's the biggest key. And so I think some folks have mentioned that, but that's, from my perspective, is really being sure of, is the digital twin unlocking or helping you answer some of the problem statements or questions that you have within your supply chain or your business.
Yeah, and that's a great comment, actually, because you can put an awful lot of effort into this, tons of data,
Correct.
tons of sensors,
Correct.
Huge models and so on. But ultimately, if it's not gonna really help you add real massive value to your business, maybe those resources and effort could be focused better on other initiatives. But that's obviously a decision we always have as supply chain professionals. Where do we focus our limited resources? Let's move then. Really, really interesting discussion, and I want to kind of delve a little bit more into that as background to the main topic, which is perhaps a little bit more focused because it's better inventory management with digital twins. Our first kind of point on this is, what does real-time monitoring with digital twins look like? So we've heard a lot about kind of real-time monitoring of aircraft, of locomotives, of gas levels in cylinders and so on. But in terms of inventory, what does that mean? And I guess, my question here is, are sensors really adding value in terms of inventory? I mean, in my experience, maybe it's limited, maybe I'm not advanced enough, kind of hourly or 15-minute data feeds of your inventory levels in a warehouse, kind of, or even in a store. Yeah, what more do you need than that? So I guess that's over to you, Nanda, first of all. I mean, what do you think about the need for really frequent inventory data coming through?
So, yeah, it's a tricky question. I was just thinking, so you really don't need a digital twin in order to manage your inventory. Industries and supply chains have been able to manage inventory. But I think the more important thing is what do you define as the inventory? From which side are you looking at the inventory? Are you looking at it from a customer side? Are you looking at it from a producer side? Are you looking at it from a raw material supplier side? So imagine if we can have a digital twin of the entire supply chain, our supplier to our customer's customer, right? So what do you mean by inventory? Is it inventory for one party is a working process for another? So I think the digital twin can be handy in a theoretical case where you have made the entire supply chain digital twin of your entire supply chain to sort of understand and predict the what's it called, the constraints across the system. And then it won't be enough, because that constraint should be able to trigger a reaction to mitigate the constraint in either in a say earlier supply chain or a forward supply chain. Then only it will have an impact on your inventory to be able to manage optimal, because you can always say optimally is this, but that's only conditional. Because if the condition changes, if the market situation changes, then this inventory has no meaning. So then you will have to have real-time interactions with a lot of data. I think it's little far-fetched. I mean, is it worth the effort?
Okay. I can think
building up on this fantasy, but I don't think, in my experience, inventory can be managed in several different ways. But probably a static digital twin can sort of help to identify from which area you need to gather the data to be able to decide on the inventory. I think that's what I would recommend.
Yeah, I guess it's a little bit like Nana was saying before. It all depends on the sort of the use case, on the situation, and in some cases, actually, really live information can be important. I can remember working many years ago, actually, with a big homewares retailer, which had huge, big shed stores, and they had a real issue where kind of some of the products would sell so fast that they really wanted to say, well, how can we find out that it's depleted on the shop floor, and we need to get it replenished from the back store? It was that bigger store, but that was kind of a bit of an exceptional case. But Venkatesh, let's move to you. What are your thoughts on what does real-time monitoring with digital twins look like?
Yeah, so it really depends on, again, I keep coming back to the thing, it depends on the use case. Yeah, if you really need to uniquely identify every element within that inventory, then, digital twin at the device or the product level, at the unique product level, is useful. Now, for example, let's say they install fire alarms within a building. You want to know which ones are working, what are they inside warranty, are they outside of warranty? It's useful to know the inventory of what's installed within a building at the unique device level, which ones are old, and you can, from that digital twin information, you can kind of say which ones are working, which one is, if something stops working, is it within warranty, is it outside of warranty? But let's say that you have a whole bunch of boxes of sweet baked goods within a retailer. Do you really care about which one is consumed versus not? You just need the aggregate number. Now, do you need a digital twin for that? It depends. Again, is the cost worth the benefit?
Yeah.
In the case of the gas cylinders, it was useful because you knew which ones you had to pick up with, for the return. versus not. So it can be useful.
Yeah.
There are instances where the cost is definitely worth the benefit.
Yeah.
I mean, rather, the benefit is really worth the cost.
Yes. Yeah, absolutely.
That's what I mean.
Okay. And Pam, again, in your experience in terms of inventory management, what does real-time monitoring look like?
Well, most of us who have experience managing inventory in distribution centers or in a plant, there are plenty of triggers in our existing systems to tell us when we're getting low on inventory. So I don't think, digital twin is a nice buzzword. It's a great buzzword. I think where it plays into adding value is actually more with maybe a fast-paced retail industry, but that's not my expertise. But with capital equipment, it could be very, very valuable to watching trends with, deteriorating performance or some kind of a disruptive machine down situation and kind of monitoring, almost like statistical process control. It could give you that feedback on the usage of an item or a part or the performance of a product so that you could actually intervene well ahead of, reaching some inventory level, and feed into the forecast. And as I was mentioning in the diesel locomotive example, actually right back into the plant to influence a change in the manufacturing process if there's some kind of an emergent quality issue or something like that. I think that's where the value can be, especially with capital equipment, to intervene very quickly early on before any kind of ERP or whatever kind of triggers tell you you're low on something.
Yeah.
But like you said, I mean, every 15 minutes is probably way too frequently, and it's more of the trend that's interesting across the board. Yep.
No, absolutely, and as you say, I think back to things like locomotives, aircraft, whatever. That's different because there you need almost second by second, 1,000 times a second to see run rates, tiny fluctuations in frequencies of how, or rotational speed or whatever it might be, and that's where you need huge amounts of data. But for something like inventory, kind of 15 minutes, once an hour, isn't that enough? So Nana, over to you. I mean, I guess you work a little bit in the data world as well. I mean, there's this question of if you've got torrents and torrents of data, what do you do with it? How do you process it as well? But your thoughts on the real-time monitoring issue?
Yeah, I mean, I think a part of it is such a swath of information and data. Just how do you kind of parse through that? What makes sense? Just looking at it from the inventory level perspective, and then with that, I always go back. I think the question presents itself: is it more of visibility? A digital twin is a simulation of mirroring that exact process, whether it's at the manufacturing level, production level, and as folks had mentioned as well, understanding where there's impacts to equipment, et cetera. But I guess my thought is it really just maybe trying to surface visibility within the value chain in terms of is there an issue within the production line, within impacts, let's say from a apparel fast retailer where we're not able to meet a delivery schedule, and then we then have to communicate that upstream to our customers, et cetera. So I think it comes down to, are we maybe looking at or framing this from a standpoint of being able to surface visibility across where there are issues in order to mitigate risk?
Yeah, and essentially you mentioned, of course, being in fast fashion. I mean, that is where, say, e-com in fast fashion, that's where you don't want to be selling 50 customers something which actually has run out of stock 10 minutes before.
Right.
But
Exactly.
that's really, really fast fashion. And I guess most e-com sites actually just have a pretty well live feed. As soon as an order's taken, it deducts 1 unit from the free inventory. So you're not really going to get into issues. Okay,
Right.
no, great, thank you. And let's move to our second point then, which is the question about how to stay agile and competitive while giving your customers what they need. So I guess the sort of question there is, what do customers need? I mean, I guess they want to see visibility of stock if they're ordering online, or if they're checking if they can collect something from a store. I guess they want visibility of their delivery or their purchase order progress. But kind of, I guess where the question is, where does the digital twin come in terms of really helping the customers? So Nanda, back to you. Your thoughts on that one?
Yeah. So there are a couple of things to look at it. So if you look at customer in the very simplest form of the customer's expectation is they need what they need at their cost and their time. Right, so they don't care about what we are doing, what visibility we have. It's just that they need what they have ordered for at the price they expect and at the time and the conditions what they want. So if you look at from a supplier perspective, so staying agile does not mean you're competitive, and being competitive does not guarantee that you're fulfilling all the customer needs.
Yeah.
Yeah, so if you look at the basic definition of a digital twin, it's just a digitized version of either a physical set or a system or process, right? So if we have to map each of them, what does it take? Which process needs to be agile? Which asset needs to be mobilized to be more competitive? And then how do we ensure that we have captured most of the customer needs, because customer needs is never fulfilled. So there is I don't know if there is any kind of a formula to tie in all those things. Otherwise, it would. I don't think anybody would have been very successful to achieve 100% customer needs. Customer needs are always a mix of subjective and objective needs. So again, it's a strategy, as we saw in the article, and it's also about the context. So in what context are we talking about being competitive? Is it a geography competitive, or is it a global competitiveness? So it's a lot of things comes into the factor. And I think in that big concept, digital twin alone cannot be a kind of one answer or one kind of a solution. So it needs more due diligence. And I think the community needs a little bit more education and clarity about what's a digital twin. It's not some kind of a pill which can be used and you get miracles out of it. So it's a process, and then we need to exactly know why we need to use the digital twin. So I know it's a little roundabout answer, but that's the fact.
Okay, no, fine. And Venkatesh, your thoughts on how to stay agile and competitive while giving your customers what they need? I mean, again, where do digital twins come into that in your view?
Yeah, so I agree with what Nanda and also Nana was saying. So customers need what they need when they need it at the lowest possible cost. In fact, lower than the lowest possible cost, typically. So that's what they need. The onus is on the supplier to kind of meet that. And as you know, there are three basic levers that you have within supply chain. There's the variability, there's velocity, and then there's visibility. Now, none of them are going to be perfect. You're never going to have a perfectly, instantaneous supply chain. At the same time, you will not have a perfectly predictable supply chain. The visibility backs up those two. So the better visibility that you have, the more you can react to what changes that are in the system. So it's there. That's the visibility part is where the digital twins really help you. It's an aid. It's not the product. The product is what the customer wants. These digital twins aid you in managing the supply chain with better visibility, better situational awareness, how to react to changes that are happening, give you more time to react to it. But at the same time, that doesn't mean that you can ignore the velocity or that you can ignore the variability. You want to kind of work on all three aspects at the same time. And that's where the visibility part comes. And that's where digital twins can be really, really useful.
Yeah, okay. No, thank you. And just extending that kind of question, so Pam, for you, I mean, that question about visibility, I mean, are digital twins really valuable where you could say, well, we're running low on this product, therefore we need to manufacture more of it. How are our components doing? Where do those components come from? How's our supplier doing? Have they got the raw materials? Is that where digital twins can really help you somehow act a bit quicker than you would otherwise and be that much more agile and competitive?
So I agree with some of what was said. I probably have a slightly different perspective. So the, suppliers are looking for cost, service levels. Those are the primary two, I think, other things as well. But, being able to avoid things like stockouts and machine down situations is really where they would see the value, I believe. So for visibility for the customer, there are real-time visibility platforms for shipments and real-time visibility to inventory levels. That's all pretty basic kind of stuff these days. Well, not basic, but with tools like P44 or 4Kites, those types of companies, you can actually see where your orders are and all that kind of good stuff. So that's not digital twin really. So I think I go back to where I was going with some of the previous questions. If you can use that feedback from the machine performance and the product performance in the field to intervene earlier than you would have for some kind of a performance issue or something that's driving a change in demand, that's to me where you can actually help reduce costs for customers in sort of downtime and emergency maintenance situations, or running out of parts or running out of spare parts or running out of product because the consumption has changed because of the feedback from the product itself, those remote monitoring type of data and the digital twin type of feedback. So I think it's more to avoid machine downs, stock outs, that type of thing, and quality issues. The other visibility mechanisms are in place with current tools.
Yeah. Okay. I think that leads nicely. Actually, we've got an interesting question from Jack Crane, which is asking, is there value having an expanded digital twin so that if there is a failing in your own supply chain or inventory, the digital twin can begin to build potential solutions rather than just telling you there's a problem? I guess that was sort of, in a way, sort of what I was expanding on a little bit earlier, that if your inventory is low, your manufacturing components are low, the supplier is low on those components, kind of, maybe a digital twin can more quickly tell you you've got a real problem, and did you realize you've got alternative supplier B who's got enough stock, so order from them this time, even though they're more expensive. I guess it's that kind of thing that Jack's sort of getting to. So I'll throw that one at you, Nana. I don't know if you've had a chance to read the question there, but your thoughts on that, or indeed on the whole agility and competitive question.
Yeah, no, I think that's a great question.
It's a nice question, but sorry, Nana, go on.
Please go ahead. I would definitely defer to some of my panelists as well.
We both have similar names. I thought he was also referring to me before. So
Right.
Yeah, similar names. Sorry. But Nanda, did you have a comment? Make a quick comment. You're on the screen now. Let's have a comment for you.
Yeah,
We'll go back
I just wanted to say that these kind of, there is endless possibilities. So we are looking at sort of making the digital twin more intelligent. So that the only way is to use generative artificial intelligence so that can also look at optimal solutions and tell you, instead of telling where things are going wrong. So digital twin by known itself is not able to provide that, but there's always possibilities to integrate that using an AI with a possibility of solutions, and you can pick up what's possible. So sorry, Nana, go on.
Okay, yeah, Nana, back to you.
No, I was going to echo that of just kind of where is your organization at from a maturity standpoint of a lot of this is taking in those data points, and how do you then, whether it's partnering with other groups, analytics, et cetera, to build or stand up some of those, whether it's machine learning or some of those capabilities so it's more kind of in tune or intuitive. That leans into, I think, what the question was posed of, is it just an alerting capability, or is it then looking into a potential solution?
Yep. Yeah, that sums that well, Nana. So our third and final point is the point about incorporating digital twin management within your supply chain and procurement. So a bit of a general comment in a way, but I guess maybe building on our discussion, I'm just interested kind of, your final thoughts really on where are you, where are your customers, where are your suppliers on this journey? Ultimately, are digital twins, is that a really helpful term, or is it just a bit confusing? So Nanda, back to you to have your thoughts.
I think a very simple answer in terms of, before we even think about implementing and incorporating, we need to have a good strategy, and then we need to look at it from a kind of what we call as clarity and empathy, because this is very much needed before we embark. It's not a kind of, otherwise it will just become a buzzword. Like many industries, you would remember it a few decades back when people started implementing ERPs and with big names. We have that ERP, we have this, but has it helped you? No, it's become more difficult for us. So, so the digital thing should not be ending up like that. It's easy to incorporate, but as any advanced technologies, it comes with its own challenges. And before we embark on that journey, we should have a good planning, and we should be very clear why we need, how we want to use it, and then we need to have a kind of empathy approach towards this. And I think that's the generic comment I would like to make.
Okay, no, thank you. Venkatesh, moving to you, just there's another question from Alan Jacques, which if you'd like to pick up on that as well in your final comments, can anyone comment on their master data journey in building a digital twin of their supply chain? So I think the article touched a little bit on master data and the need for your whole data strategy. So it's a great question from Alan. So Venkatesh, any thoughts, any final thoughts on you on the digital twin journey and how you go about the data for it?
Yeah, sure. So in my present company, we install these fire alarms, we install audiovisual equipment within buildings. And so for that, the digital twin is useful in the sense that you need to be able to uniquely identify every component that is used within the building. So it's insofar as that. So there is, you need to maintain for every installation what is installed, what is the serial number for that. And if you look at any durable goods like refrigerators and anything that you look in your house, they will have a serial number over there, and effectively that traces that product over there. It's not a digital twin in the sense that it can talk to you and it'll transmit data and stuff, but they're uniquely identifiable and it's stored in the computer. In the pharmaceutical industry, you do have digital twins in the sense that every saleable unit is uniquely identifiable, and each one is serialized to be able to trace it as it moves through the supply chain. Now, the data management over there is onerous because the data has to travel along with the product. So as it goes from the manufacturer to the distributor to the 3PL, the data travels with them. So yes, the master data is really crucial over there because when you transfer the data, it can't fail. You cannot receive product within your warehouse until the data is also received. So that master data in terms of who is sending it, where is it coming from, what is being sent, needs to be able to transfer easily.
Yeah.
So yeah, we've used it, and I think there is scope for it. It depends on what you're using it for.
Yeah. Okay, that's very interesting. And interesting when you're mentioning pharma and the need for kind of like absolutely high quality data there. That leads to the whole debate about blockchain, and which is being another technology.
Exactly.
Is it hype or is it reality? But that's for another. I think we have got a topic on blockchain coming up, but that's another time. Thank you, Venkatesh.
Yep.
Pam, your thoughts on the sort of the data journey and any other sort of final comments on digital twin and the journey for that.
Sure, and I did notice the comment that was just made. I believe it's just very hard in general to keep data valid, current, accurate, maintained, up to date, what have you. And with a digital twin, there's so much data to be actually kept and maintained to be accurate and lead to a reasonable conclusion. I think that the focus there needs to be on that accuracy and relevance, and data by itself isn't very useful until it's turned into information, and more is not necessarily better. So I think that we're in an era of hype and buzzwords and publicity and PR and making things look a certain way, versus what the substance actually is. So I can see there's a huge benefit to having this digital twin data to come back and intervene, early on to avoid quality issues and machine downs and service interruptions and stockouts and all of those things. I think that's very, very valuable. But it has to be done kind of responsibly and methodically. And really, it has to be maintained. If the team cannot maintain the accuracy of the data, then it's like, what do they say? If you automate a bad process, it just makes you do bad things faster. You know, you can go down that path too with that kind of thing. So it's guardrails and guidelines and oversight. You know, to get the value, it has to be real.
Yeah, no, those are really good good comments and warnings. Absolutely.
So it seems to me, I think we should flip the question around in a sense, because is it useful? Maybe, maybe not. But it's good to know about it, because you may be presented with a problem that this can solve for you.
Absolutely.
So ignorance of that is not a good thing. It doesn't mean that you must use it.
Yeah. It does lead to that whole debate about, you know, if you have huge flows of data, if you then, you know, as is often talked about, you then got AI acting on the data, you then got decisions spitting out. You need to have controls and warnings, otherwise the risk, as Pam says, you do bad things even faster, and that isn't going to be
exactly right.
And then you get your total lack of buy-in from the users, all saying, "Oh my God, it's all a disaster. Let's scrap it." So yeah, no, absolutely.
So the capability is useful, having that capability.
Yeah. No,
so having the capability is extremely useful.
Yeah. No, over to you for your final comments.
Yeah, so I think getting real clear on what questions a group or supply chain is trying to answer would be my thought. As a great place to start. And I think some other folks had mentioned as well is there's a ton of information, a ton of data. Making sure that it's accurate, that it's clean is probably the big piece, because then I think that leads into if we can couple that with here's some of the questions that we're trying to unlock. I think it then leads into I believe here's where a digital twin can better serve us, whether it's as I mentioned, stockouts or visibility within the value chain in terms of to mitigate any risk for a production line being down. Those are kind of the things that I'd encourage supply chain organizations to kind of think through in order to maybe help accelerate this notion of leaning into standing up a digital twin.
Yeah, those are some great concluding comments. Thank you, Nana. Just really just highlight there's a lot of effort, as we've heard, in terms of making a digital twin work, the data and so on, and you better be sure it's going to answer a really important question and really help you get benefit to justify the effort of getting all that right. No, thank you. Great. Well, that brings us to the end of our time. So thank you, all four of you, for some really great comments there. So Nanda Kishore of Ineos Tisdale, Venkatesh Narayan from Tech Electronics, Pam Wiseman from Supply Chain Advisory Services, and Nana Achapong from Textile Fashion Group. So thank you, all four of you, for some really great insights there. Thank you, audience, for some really interesting questions. I love the one from Jack Crane, but I think Alan and Jacques have two really great interventions for us to comment on. So Alan, a Supply Chain Talk mug will be on its way to you. Our next episode is the same time, 4 p.m. UK time next week on the 25th of October. And the subject is really quite related today and builds quite well on it, because it's all about Internet of Things in the enhanced streamlined supply chain. So that will build very nicely on some of the subjects we've had today. And I look forward to next week's episode. I hope you'll be able to join us there. So until then, goodbye.